Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, The Late Viewer. So today we're going to be talking about Backrooms by Kane Parsons. Um, I want to add, before I saw this movie, I had no prior knowledge about the Backrooms. I didn't realize that this was like such a big community and there was like so many like well-established theories about this concept prior to this movie. So when I went into this movie, I just had so many thoughts and I just didn't know whether my thoughts were correct or not because I didn't have like that prior knowledge. But I feel like after seeing what everybody else had to say about the movie, I think that any interpretation that you have about the Backrooms at this point is a valid like analysis, and so I'm ready to share my thoughts. So, welcome to the video. Okay, so first to introduce, I guess, my idea of the background, I want to talk about a scene in the movie that takes place a lot further into the movie, but this scene is very, I think, important to help you get the concept of what the backrooms is. So there is a scene where Clark kidnaps or takes Mary hostage, and he's explaining to her what he thinks the backroom is, which I also agree with him. He says something along the lines of the backrooms is a replica of our memories, and he says that the memories are replicated so much that they begin to glitch, they begin to become a little bit messy because as the memories begin to replicate, they even forget how they were initially supposed to be. And I think what I think the backrooms is I think the backrooms is supposed to be a representation of our memories, but in the sense that our memories are infinite, our memories are not perfect, and our memories also have like certain like hidden doors or hidden like concept ideas, etc., that we sometimes are unaware of. So one of the things that you notice when you first get introduced to the backrooms is that it's just endless space. There's multiple rooms, and in these rooms they might be empty, or the rooms might have very weird or random items. And I think the way I draw the similarities between the backroom and our memories is that with our memories, I think of it as just open space. And I guess you can probably like think of it as rooms, but just multiple rooms, and some rooms are full because these rooms have memories that are a little bit clearer than others, and then some rooms are empty because these rooms have not yet had a memory to occupy them. And so we have all these memories in our space, and we have certain memories that we don't even realize that we have, but they're there. And these memories over time get replicated and they get revisited and they get turned around and turned around until these memories sometimes glitch. These memories sometimes don't always look how they initially looked when we first had the memory. And I think that is just a true concept because even in life, one of the things that happens when like you have the police who question a witness, they always say something along the lines of they want to question the witness as quickly as possible because they know the sooner that they wait, the easier or the more prominent it is for the witness's memory to become inaccurate. So this is one of the concepts I think that I liked and that really helped me to, I guess, draw my conclusion about certain things about the back room. Okay, so next I want to talk about the still lives or the entities in the back room because I think this is also very interesting. So one of the things that I think myself and my friends were said early on when we were watching the movie was that how is it that some of the still lives or entities in the back rooms were able to bleed while others were not able to? Because a lot of the ideas that we had about the back rooms was established first from watching the movie, but also from what Clark began to understand of the back rooms when he explored the back rooms. And so he kind of like was explaining that, hey, they don't bleed, blah, 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 they don't have pain. But later on, we see that Captain Clark does in fact bleed, and based on his response to being attacked, does feel pain. And the way I can interpret this is the fact that because the backrooms is as a result of our memories, some of the entities are just like fillers. So it's like everyday life. When you're walking through everyday life, you see multiple different people. Some of these people are not relevant to your life, so you don't really have that much detail or anything else about them, versus people who are close to you. You have a lot more detail about these people. You have the emotions that come with these people. You have just so much more information about these people and people that you see who are everyday people walking through. So one of the things that we do is, like, when we go back to the scene where Clark is with Mary and we see there are three different entities initially before Captain Clark comes along. The wheelchair man could have just been a man that Clark had seen many years ago or recently, but his eyes saw him, but he didn't actually register the person, but it was registered in his brain. The difference between all three of those still lives and Clark's still life is that Clark's still life is a replica of him. No one can really have an identical or accurate memory of someone else than they can themselves. This is why Clark's still life, or Clark's entity, Captain Clark, is able to bleed and do all these things, because this is Clark's own physical replica of himself. So that is how I interpreted that scene. Okay, so this is another thing I want to talk about the Backrooms, because I thought this was very interesting. So in the scene where Clark goes to Mary and he's telling her about the Backrooms, he reveals to her that he's been in this room, or he's been down there many, many times, and Mary's like asking him some questions. She's like basically saying like, well, have you seen anybody else, X, Y, and Z? And he's explained to her, no, but I've heard things, I've heard people walking. And the way I interpreted this is that because the Backrooms is a replica of our memories, it's also a replica of our mental state as well. And I think that the Backrooms are highly unstable, highly not well, it's highly unstable and it's dangerous. And I think that Clark is in a very unstable and dangerous mental state. And the reason why I assume this is because he has a lot of rage and pent up anger from his marriage or his divorce. And because of that, going into the Backrooms, he fits the natural atmosphere or the natural environment that the Backrooms is. And so he's not hurt when he's in the Backrooms. The reason why the first instance of killing occurs in the Backrooms when Kate and Bobby enters is because their mental state does not fit the mental state of the Backrooms. So when they go in, the backroom reacts to them as if a virus or our bodies reacting to like something that doesn't belong. So when they go in there, the Backrooms is like, oh my god, this is a foreign entity, this does not belong with our mental state. And so this is why this is the first instance of a killing in the Backrooms, is when Bobby and Kate entered, because they did not fit the physical or the psychological makeup of the Backrooms. So in that scene, we see that they both die, and initially Clark is afraid, and rightfully so, because he doesn't, even though his mental state fits the backroom, he doesn't understand what's going on. But we slowly see that this changes when he gets to the scene where he encounters his still life. And I think the reason, well, I'm assuming that's what he encountered. He encounters his still life, who picks up the camera and points it at Clark. It's almost like showing Clark that you belong here. You're literally one of us. But then that Clark seeing his still life made him less afraid. Clark seeing his still life made him start to understand that this is what the Backrooms is. This is where I belong. That's what I think. Okay. Another scene I want to talk about is the scene where Mary receives the voice message from Clark. And in that voice message, he says to her something along the lines of, I opened the window. I think this scene is very important because we get throughout the movie glimpses of Mary's memories from her past, and I can almost assume or interpret her memories as she was in the back rooms. And the reason why I say this is because Mary is in this room and all the windows and doors are barred up and covered, and she's just about to open the window in the room, and her mom stops her. Her mom says, stop, I told you you can't go outside, or something along those lines. And I'm assuming it's because her mom is in the back rooms and her mom is losing her mind, because she's like, what the hell is this place? We need to get out. And initially they don't know how to get out, because like we know, the back rooms is just endless and endless and endless spaces. And so Mary doesn't realize that the window that she's been shutting off in her memory is a memory that she was once upon a time in the back rooms. That's what I think, but I mean, it could be wrong. And so what happens is that Clark calls her, and Clark says to her, I opened the window. And the way I interpreted this is that Clark is saying to her that he has opened up that memory she's trying to shut out, and that memory is that she, I don't want to say belongs in the back rooms, but she knows about the back room, that she's shutting that memory out. Um, and so when she hears that from him, aside from being his therapist, I think this line specifically is what caught her attention, because she's thinking to herself, how do you know about the window? Because the window is something specific to her memory. I mean, yes, Clark could be talking about any other window, but it's like, why would he say that specifically to her? I don't know. The final point I want to make about this movie is the scene where Clark dies. And I think that scene is so important because I think it really does tie into like my thought process about the backrooms. So what happens is that Clark is still in this very unstable mental state. He has captured Mary and he forces her to sit down at this table, and he's like saying all these things to her. And Mary is now shifting from a therapist to a person in survival mode, where she says something along, I think he says like he's trying to react the scene that they do in his therapy sessions, where she pretends to be his wife and he talks to her and she says what they think, like have a back and forth conversation. But when this is going on, I think what happens is that Clark says something along the lines of like he doesn't want to change or something like that, and Mary reassures him that he doesn't have to change, he can stay the way he is. But because of her saying that, she introduces a state of like calm and peace to Clark that he initially didn't have. Because the way I see Clark is that he's pent up with all this rage and anger, and he doesn't have any form of like peace. And so Mary's able to introduce that state or that form of peace to him by telling him those words like, yes, you're unstable, yes, you're whatever, but it's okay and nothing's wrong with that. And so that gives him a sense of peace. And that's why initially when he's in there with Mary, everything is fine, nothing's happening, all the still lifes are calm and they're, like, I don't say pleasant, but they're calm and not doing anything. But we also don't see Captain Clark. The only time that we see a change in the environment and in the reaction of the still lives is when Clark's mental state begins to shift, when his mental state no longer begins to align with the mental state or the environment. And we see Captain Clark is now, not only has Clark's mental state changed, and not only does it no longer align with the environment, Clark is now being seen as a virus. He's not being seen as an entity that needs to be eliminated. So this is why Captain Clark comes and then he kills Clark, because Clark is no longer welcome or no longer a entity that belongs in the backrooms. Um yeah. All right, guys. So that is all I have to say today for this movie review. This is definitely, I think, an interesting movie. I feel like despite having these initial like thoughts on the movie, there's just still so much I don't know or don't understand. So far I've seen like so many like amazing ideas from other people, and I just would love to hear what you guys think about the movie. There are scenes that I didn't even think to interpret because there's just so much behind it. I think it's a good movie, and I think that it definitely, it makes you be like, it allows you to be creative. It allows you to just think of so many things and just really like dive into like what you want to interpret from this movie, which I really, really do appreciate from the movie. Let me know down below what you guys think, and I will see you guys in my next video.